Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Gift magical mornings with Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Compact and stylish, Virtuo Pop is made to meet every morning coffee craving. From espresso to coffee, hot or iced, at the click of a button. And celebrate the season with Nespresso's limited edition coffee flavors. Sweet almond and hibiscus, cinnamon and candied tamarind, and festive double espresso. Magic in the making. Shop the holiday gift collection exclusively at Nespresso.com.
Hi, welcome to Haven. This is a podcast that's a safe space for curiosity and conversation. I'm your host, Haven, and today I'm curious about work friends. Work friends. And I add quotations there because friend is such like a loose term. It could literally mean your ride or die best friend, or you can casually say that about your neighbor. And I recently learned about to not throw that word around, where I did a podcast episode about people pleasing. And the example I shared, I said a gym friend, where I was thinking about a friend's birthday that was coming up. I see her every morning in class. It's like a quick wave. I had known her maybe 6 months at this point. And she had mentioned her birthday was coming up. So I was thinking, do I go out of my way to get a Starbucks card or a note or a handoff? And maybe I would in the past, but then I realized I don't know this woman that well. I'm just not going to do it because I think it would be overexerting with time I don't have. Well, I don't think I worded it well, because way we cut the clip, it sounded like I was too busy to get my friend a birthday gift. And it went viral online, and especially Twitter, X, whatever. It had 27 million views. And I would say about half of those were people getting it and being like, yeah, that's people pleasing at the extent for just someone that you're not close with. And then other people harping on the fact that I said friend. And they're like, you're too busy for your friend. It's such a bad thing to do that. You should make time. And I realized, oh my gosh, I really should be careful slinging this word around because there's different weight to it. Absolutely. And so we're in the season of relationships on the podcast, season 3. And I was like, well, there's way different types of relationships in the ways that we navigate. And one of those is work relationships, where you're spending 40 hours a week with people and you're talking to them sometimes even more times than your family during the week. And yet, is it a friend? Would you be friends outside of work? If you ever leave that job, are you going to be friends? And so I wanted to bring in my closest work friend, we're business partners, we're co-owners of a business. We work together a lot, but it isn't that weird category of work friend. So I feel like this is an awkward way to bring someone on, is keep putting in quotations that you're really not their friend. But I want to bring on my business partner, Kyle.
So good to be here, Haven. And one thing you mentioned right away that really resonated, we were actually joking about this yesterday, that we spend so much time together. Specifically, most of our waking hours throughout the week are spent together. But we were joking last night when we were together about we most likely wouldn't be friends outside of work.
Right.
If we ever did part ways professionally, it would probably be see you later, good luck, hope everything goes well. So it's a really interesting dynamic of spending that much time with someone, but also having that understanding that it is a professional relationship and most likely wouldn't really transpire outside of work.
It's kind of strange because you and I work really well together. And I feel like, especially during the week, it's low drama, it's pretty in tune, it's healthy respect, but you're right. Eventually, when we do part ways, I'm like, we're not going to call and catch up with one another. And I think that's most people's experience with the people that they're working with. So how do you navigate that kind of relationship in a great way, but also in a way that knows maybe outside of this, we don't have a ton in common?
Yeah, and I think really what it boils down to, and the reason we work so well together, we have this mutual respect for each other, and we share a vision very professionally. But my vision outside of work is very different than your vision. We are both achieve different stages of life, different areas of our life. So I think it's really having that mutual respect that we never had to like write down and define. We were very fortunate. I think it happened very natural for both of us. But I think having that mutual respect and understanding that difference between professional and personal is really important. And I think those lines people assume get blurred, but the reality is they don't get blurred for us. We do spend time personally, but we invite our families to be a part of it. We invite our significant others, and I think that's also really important.
So let's talk a little bit about how we got to this space right now, like turn back time. So I worked in a similar sphere to you for many years, but we were in totally different lanes. And then I always had this goal of making the entrepreneurial leap. I knew I wanted to transition into ownership of a company, scaling of a company, but I didn't know exactly what that idea would be. And you actually approached me and you were saying, hey, my business is growing. It's something you had founded. And you were saying, I need someone with this integrator type role. It's an EOS term, and it's something that I had experience in. And so I was wondering, because I always envisioned myself being like the owner and the founder. I was like, can I get under someone else's vision? And I had my own kind of checklist of what I wanted. I was like, I'm looking for ownership, equity, scaling, this whole kind of laundry list. And I was like, is that something that you'd want? And you were game. And so we signed and we've been in business, but I want to hear a little bit more about like what drew you to start the company that we're running right now? Because right now, as it stands today, I was like, we're a multi-million-dollar company. We have about 40 employees in 11 states, 2 countries. Like we've scaled it pretty substantially, but it started like in your closet kind of like, what, 12, 13 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's coming up on 13, almost 14 years now. And, I love speaking about this because it's such a passion, right? I founded the company and it was really derived from helping people and surrounding yourself with really good human beings. So one thing you mentioned that I'd love to call out is I was looking for an integrator or like a detail-oriented operations person. But the reality was I was actually really looking for a good human being to like go on this journey together with. Entrepreneurship, it can be a lonesome journey. And it's hard for most people to relate to that journey. So first and foremost, I was looking for a good human, and we had spent time together and had worked and collaborated in some various projects together. So I knew you were a genuinely good human, which was first and foremost most important. Now, the cherry on top is you're hyper organized, you have great attention to detail, and I tend to live in the clouds. So having someone like yourself to make sure that the vision becomes a reality and that we're gaining traction with the business was really, really important. But really, at the end of the day, the company was really formed with the goal of helping people out. Without getting too far in the weeds, it was a passion for me to work with other business owners and buy back their time. Like, so you can spend more time with your friends and your family and make your kids' soccer schedules. That is truly the passion of starting the business. And then I had personally hit a ceiling myself. I was not drinking the Kool-Aid. I was working nights and weekends. I was doing work that I knew wasn't going to achieve the goals that we really wanted to achieve, or I wanted to achieve at that time. And so bringing you on and at least inviting that conversation was very natural. And I think even throughout the process of not even negotiating, but communicating about expectations really laid the groundwork for why we're able to be very successful to this day, not just a business, but as partners in business.
And even to pull it, because you're right, you are in the clouds. I feel like you have 100 ideas, you're enthusiastic, you got like such good vibes. And I'm like, we deliver premium assistant support. I'm like, that's our business. We are helping people, but the way that we do that, the way that we remove worry, give them their time and focus back is by providing like premium, high quality, typically virtual assistants. Sometimes we'll do recruiting for in-person. But the reason that we can even do that industry is you and I both have a background in being executive assistants. And so that was something where we talk a lot of like, well, how do we recreate how we would do it? what was our reasonings of why our clients wanted us to remain their support? And I think that's so interesting for you is because you were after college trying to figure out like, what do you want to do with your life? And you knew, well, I can just help people do what they already need. And essentially you scaled that where you had contractors under you. And then you were running like so many clients at once, making them all feel like top priority. But how did you do that? Like, let's go back even to like 10 years ago when Efficientaid was just you and a handful of 1099 contractors. What did the day-to-day look like?
Yeah, I'll step back even a little bit farther back. At the end of the day, I wanted to be a business owner. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I grew up in Wisconsin in a small town in the Midwest. And when I moved out to Colorado, I'm like, I am going to become an entrepreneur. But I didn't have any money. So I didn't have a product. I wasn't inheriting a business. So at that point, really what I was able to sell was myself. And at that point in life, I definitely had a help first mentality. I was a jack of all trades person. So that's how the company was originally formed. I'm going to market myself to work with business owners who just needed a few hours here and there to offload so they could focus on, what they enjoy doing. And that ultimately started growing very rapidly through word of mouth and through referrals. And it's really funny when you mention it. I almost have a little bit of like my heart racing when you mention all the clients I was supporting legitimately in a closet. I mean, that's not a joke that you mentioned. Literally, my office was a small closet in my house. I was operating as an assistant, supporting upwards of 20 clients at a certain point, working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. Looking back, I can joke about it now, but it was a very tough period of life, but also very, very rewarding. And there was this great pivotal moment in forming our professional relationship because that was I'd hit a ceiling. I was overworked. I didn't have the best model and I knew it wasn't scalable. So ultimately bringing you on kind of unlocked the opportunity where I had the vision, I had the nuts and bolts, but I needed someone to really help scale it and allow us to affect more people than I was able to do by myself.
Well, I think two things came into effect of why that was able to make that shift. One was you found EOS, which really the entrepreneurial operating system is a big structure for the business that I feel like helped just add some scaffolding that was missing there. And then, when I came in, it was still contractor based. I would say there's probably like 13 1099 contractors when I started, and we've made this huge evolution of adjustments and scaling. But even when I came in, I was like, well, why did I choose to go into business with you? Because in my mind, it was either going to be myself or with my mentor as a portion. It wasn't on my plan to. But I had experience with you working before. And I was like, Kyle's just really smart. You knew how to figure things out, but it was also paired with you're a really hard worker. I find it especially funny of how different we are, where you literally own and operate a llama farm. And so many times during our calls, you're like, hold on, I think there's a bear on the property. And then you just have to pause and do that. But like to someone who would run and operate and work with their hands outside of working time, like you put in the time, like you're trying to work smarter, not harder. It's not just trying to kind of like tend the ground, but that was another portion that I considered. But the third one is you're right. Like you have like boundless ideas, boundless energy. And there is this one thing, it's called like the visionary integrator continuum. Like they call like one at the far end of a visionary is like a flaming visionary. And those are like the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs, like so many ideas, so much intensity. Then on the other end is an integrator where on the far end, they can just be only data, only spreadsheets, only the like tactical boots on the ground stuff. When you take the assessment, you're a little bit into visionary. You're definitely on that camp, but not so far. And when I take the test, I'm a little bit into integrator. So I'm not so far. So technically, like you could do my job, and you did do my job before I came in, and vice versa. And the times that you've needed to step out, I can do that. But I think that's also when I realized I was like, we're not so far off that there's going to be a ton of conflict and tension, but it's going to be more like complementary. And I think that's what made me say, okay, at the end of the day, I also would agree you're a good person, where I was like, I have to be in business with someone that I trust their character and I trust their decision making. But I'm thinking of pulling this back for the listeners. Not many of them maybe can relate even to like the business partnership or the ownership, but it really is these day-to-days of how you're working with someone and alongside someone. So I'm thinking of like our experiences with that, of one of the most traumatic moments of my life when I was pregnant with my first child and I had to have an emergency C-section at 36 weeks, a month early from what planned. You were one of the first people I told my family, and then I called you and I said, hey, I'm so sorry to do this. I'm going to be gone right now, and I'm starting my maternity leave. It's a month sooner. You're going to have to carry all of my responsibilities. And you just took it. Like, you stepped in. So I also want to hear kind of what was your perspective of when that was happening, because it's a unique time for me to be like messaging like pre-op, like, okay, I'll see you on the other side.
It's so funny. You know, I'm glad your perspective was I took it with grace and helpfulness, but I was freaking out. But it was also this moment where I realized having this work relationship, or we had this really unique ability where you're in this most vulnerable state of mind. You're literally in the hospital about to have a child. And like you mentioned, of course, family and your significant other, but it was interesting because I was in that queue of people to speak about. So that I felt really honored to be a part of that, right? That, you know, being a recent father myself and being alongside my wife during that experience, I mean, it's a very sensitive, very powerful moment to be, hey, but hold on, I'm going to call my work friend because I need some support.
Yeah.
So it became very natural to want to lean in and help you out. And, you know, it's interesting because when you bring up that story, it also reminds me on the flip side of a time that happened to me, right? And it was a really unfortunate, sad time, but, you know, and very similar where, you know, a few years ago, my brother unexpectedly passed away. And of course, it was my parents. I was with my wife at the time, but you were right there at that list of people I didn't feel I needed to necessarily contact, but I wanted to make sure you were aware. And I knew that my family, my friends were going to be there to support me on a personal level. But I also, professional side was also very important. And that's where you were able to come in. I wasn't looking for comfort on a personal level. I was looking for comfort that, hey, I got this. I'm going to keep the ship afloat. And I think in both those scenarios we're speaking about, that became very natural for us to say, hey, I got this. Go be with your husband or your wife. Go be with your family and spend time on the personal side, because I'm going to cover the work side of it, which is very important for most people in their lives. That's a big element. So I think reflecting on both of those situations, it's probably the first time I've really reflected on it as much as I am right now, because very different scenarios, right? Happiness and sadness, but very dramatic. But also both of us being very natural and willing to say, I got you. Like, I got you. Go be and spend the time that you need, because I'm going to take care of the other side. And that is, I think that's rare. That's rare to find. I think in a world as well where a lot of people naturally tend to have a little bit of this dog eat dog, you know, hey, your problem's not my problem, which is unfortunate, really unfortunate. And I think that for us, it was very different where, hey, your problem is also my problem, and like, I'm going to help you out. And I think that really at the very beginning and in the middle of our relationship, it really helped bond both of us on a professional level, but also, you know, personal level. That is still important. I think a part of a work relationship is having, of course, boundaries and respect. But let's be real, we're all humans, and personal and professional, there's some blend. Like, I know your kiddos. I know your husband. That's important. Now, I'm not calling your kiddos or hanging out with them on the side, or, you know, we're going to the park together, but it's important to understand there's so much to life outside of work, and you need support in both areas.
Well, I think I remember that instance you're talking about, because I was looking back. I was like, you know, I remember it was Halloween. I was giving the kids a bath, and you rarely will call outside hours in that way. So I think that's also where I was like, something's different. And so I told Aaron, I was like, I need to step into the other room. I was like, Kyle's calling. I was like, you respect boundaries so much that, especially on a holiday, especially at night, or, you know, and so I was like, I'm going to step away. And then it was kind of one of those worst case scenario moments. But I was realizing, I was like, you know, I think it is because we do keep most of our conversations within this structured workday time. Like, it doesn't bleed into this outside, you know, family time. Now, that said, I'll give you a voice memo after the gym at 6 a.m. when I'm fired up. I'm like, but it's a voice memo on Slack. I'm like, you listen whenever you want to. So, but that part's different. But it kind of reminds me of even like our weekly standing call. We call them a same page meeting. We follow an agenda for that. I think sometimes it can get into the side of like, it is so casual or what's going on. And I have a friend, she's also another entrepreneur. She was like, how do you structure those meetings like with your business partner? And like, what's the format? And we have the same agenda. We'll spend 5 minutes up front with like a highlight from the last week. What was your highlight professionally? What was your highlight personally? Just to set it on a good tone. Then we'll go into headlines. Like, is there any employee, vendor, customer, client headlines that you need to be aware of? We'll look at our to-dos of what did we commit to doing the last week? Did we complete it? We have a goal of 90% completion. And then the most of our time is called issue clearing. And we put on, we populate issues on a shared list during the week. And we know we're going to have our Monday meeting. It's my first meeting of the entire week. And we're going to chop through what matters here. And we start on time and we end on time. We also rate the meeting at the end of the time together of 1 to 10. And it's being brutally honest, like 7 because you were late and we spent way too much time on this issue instead of deciding. Or that was a 9 out of 10. You know, we kind of also are pretty clear of what makes a meeting successful. But I think we park things into this is a work thing. Like this isn't something that bleeds together. Or even you're in town for strategic planning. Our CFO flew in. We set up this whole strategic thing. But we try and mix in where I want when my family thinks about my work that they see me work really hard. They see me put in the time and dedication, but also they have good memories. So like even last night, we invited the kids to dinner. They were kind of insane. They were climbing under the table. They were moving around, but it's like a treat for them to get pizza and pasta. And I was like, I want them to have these memories of, oh, mom's work sometimes is fun for me. And like, you're so good with kids. And they had a great time. And, you know, you brought in Janelle, your wife, and Davis, and your au pair, Millie, and we went to Disneyland Sunday. And so I think we also try and sprinkle it in where I don't want my life to be so sectioned from family that they're like, oh, mom's working, I don't know what it is and whatever. But they kind of have glimpses of, oh, me getting to be a part. I understand the people she's on the phone with, or I understand a little bit of what it looks like. I'll take them to my co-working spot in my little office, and my daughter will bring her like school Chromebook and do her like after homework. But I think it is a weird mix of intense boundaries, but also inviting the family in. So, you know, I want Janelle to always be pro you working so hard because she sees the fulfillment, but that also she gets to be a part of the fun stuff, you know, and that the spouses reap the benefit of all of our hard work.
Yeah, I think it's really well said. And, you know, you made a couple really great points. It's about intentional boundaries as well, right? And they're not necessarily extremely rigid. But, for example, in that same page meeting, you know, when we're processing headlines and issues, they're professional headlines and issues. You know, I'm not coming to you with like, hey, oh my gosh, you should have, you know, the convo I had with Janelle last night, we're in a fight. That doesn't happen. And nor should it happen, right? It's a very professional setting. Now, what you mentioned at the beginning of those calls is important, and it is finding in a very respectful way to integrate work with family. So even at the beginning of our calls, we talk for 5 minutes. What is something professionally that was very positive, but also personally? But outside of that, the rest of the conversation is very personal or professional. You know, the other thing you touched on, like, going to Disneyland and doing dinners together and inviting family, what's really important, and I think people try to shy away from this, is kind of back to this point I maybe mentioned earlier, is like we are human beings. We have families. We have life outside of work. So let's not shy away from that. That doesn't mean we're talking about gossip with our families and I know everything that's going on, but it's also important that I know your family. You know, I have rapport with them. They are invited to come and explore, you know, whether it's dinners or activities. So I think it's really important to not shy away from those conversations or shy away from this whole other huge aspect of life that's so important. I think it's that delicate dance between making sure our relationship is professional, but not shying away that a huge other part of who we are as humans in life is personal. It's family, it's kiddos. So let's get to know that area, because that allows, I think, us to work even more efficiently together because we know what's happening and what we're dealing with at a high level outside. I know you're a mom, you have young kids, you have a husband who travels occasionally, and I know how that can affect professional. That's really important, but also not crossing that boundary of digging deep into any of those particular areas.
Well, I think you're totally onto something. And I forgot to add, once a month, we'll do an extended same page where it's not 5 minutes up front. It's like 30 minutes where it's like, how are you feeling about the business? How is life impacting things right now? What's your state of mind? Because it does help to know of like, hey, I had a really exhausting month, nothing to do with work, but because of these XYZ reasons or whatever, because it does help to know with empathy or understanding when, maybe something's delayed or a deliverable wasn't on time, which rarely happens, but it's great to know the whole perspective, not as an excuse, but also kind of giving like a litmus test of like, well, how are you doing, just as a holistic person too? But I think you also touched on something where it is these boundaries with work, because, one of the things that I get the most frustrated with, or I get the ick on, is when someone's using the term like work wife, work husband. I don't know if like you've heard that before. I had seen it like probably 10 years ago. I worked in a company and some guy was saying that about like who was essentially I think it was his secretary or admin. They were having a straight up emotional affair. I was like, this is crossing way too many boundaries. Like the fact they're even comfortable saying that, but also they were way too integrated. Like what's your take or response when someone's casually kind of throwing that term around, or someone even introducing someone, oh, this is my work wife, work husband? It puts the spouse in a really weird position to ever hear that. What's your opinion on that term?
Yeah, I'm glad we are speaking about this because first of all, same. The first word that comes, like, it feels icky. Mm-hmm. And it feels disrespectful also to my wife. I would never want my wife hearing from other people about a work wife. I think it naturally in our world, which is really unfortunate, we feel the need to label everything. And I think it's lazy, really. It's just like a lazy term because it's uncomfortable and we need to label it, so let's call it that. But that's not what it is, right? We're colleagues, we're business partners, we're collaborators, right? That's what's important. I'm not coming to you looking for a replacement emotionally for my wife at all, period. And I think it's important for anybody listening that we don't need to label these situations, specifically when it's two different genders. That makes people feel uncomfortable, right? And I think, even from outside views of friends and family, it can feel foreign to them. Like, what do you mean you spend most of your time not only with someone who isn't your wife, but someone who is a different gender than you? It makes people feel uncomfortable, even though we don't feel uncomfortable at all, right? And so that term I don't enjoy. I think it's lazy, and I think it's our natural tendency when things are uncomfortable, we need to slap a title or label on it. And I don't believe it benefits anybody, honestly. So the short answer is I'm not a fan of it. I never refer to you as a work wife. I never will. You are my business partner and someone we have mutual respect for, and we have a shared vision professionally. And our shared vision just happens to be creating a business together. There are other folks that they have a work friend where they're in their same department, or they happen to just sit next to each other, so they're collaborating often. That is okay. Let's not feel that we have to put that into a separate box and put a label on it. It's okay, and I think we should lean in more to the collaboration and respect around that rather than a title.
And I think it also goes back to the simplicity of being a good person. I think like having security in our respective marriages and boundaries. I was thinking more, I was like, I don't know if I would have gone into business with someone who wasn't securely married, because you're spending so much time. You are talking about the specifics and the nitty gritty and really difficult details. If there's any hint of someone who would blur a line, I just would be out. I would say it's not worth having to have that conversation or having someone who doesn't have boundaries on each side. But even going back to the concept of work friend, I was thinking it's such a unique stage, because also for for the most part, we're unique because it's business partners. We're co-owners of a business. Like, we make a lot of decisions, but I think of my times past. And work friends, you don't often tell your work friend when you're getting really, really fed up and you want to quit, because it could jeopardize your position there. So I've had times past where I'm on either side. I've had friends that randomly quit, and I was like, I had no idea. I kind of hurt you didn't tell me first, and that you just gave your notice and then tell me as an afterthought. But I can also see why. Like, it's hard to tell someone before you then like make the decision and tell it. So the work friend, in parentheses, is really distinctive, because there's a lot of opportunities where you would absolutely have told someone outside that, but in that scenario, it doesn't make sense to tell your friend before you tell your boss that you're leaving. Like, what's your opinion on those kind of conversations when it really is this unique, we just work together, but feelings can get hurt?
This episode is brought to you by Efficientaid. Efficientaid offers fractional virtual assistants whose sole purpose is to help people who are making a difference. Are you bogged down in your email and still managing your own calendar? Delegating those tasks to a high-caliber career assistant can free you up to utilize your time towards the areas of your best and highest use, allowing you to focus on the areas you truly thrive in. Learn more at efficientaid.com. That's efficient, AIDE.com.
Okay, babe, what's your favorite fight that we've ever had?
Favorite?
Your favorite fight?
Okay, the first one that comes to mind is when we had Disneyland annual passes, and it would take like an hour or an hour and a half to get there every time. And we are just car fighters. We just now know we can't fight in a car. But you got so upset that we had to pull over. And then my thought was like, wait, are we going to Disneyland or not?
We fought a lot of times on the way to the happiest place on earth. That could be the descriptor of our entire marriage. But we've created a course called How to Fight Better,
with our actual marriage counselor, Dr. Jonathan Cood, who's helped us through many fights throughout the journey of our relationship. But he's given us helpful and practical tools of how to fight better. And we really wanted to share them with you guys. We didn't have a healthy model of conflict growing up. We had to learn these. And so we really wanted to be able to break it down. And it's so much bigger than a podcast episode. These are important things where the modules are small chunks. You watch them with your partner, and then you have an entire discussion together. We're really, really proud of it. It's something that's helped our relationship thrive. So if you go to joinpillowtalk.com, you can get How to Fight Better. It's out now.
Okay, back to the episode.
You know, it's a really valid point, because a lot of when we've been speaking about is about boundaries, but also about transparency. But you really nail it, because transparency with your work friend does not mean you have to tell them everything, every decision, everything that's going on. There needs to be that balance, and there needs to be that fine line. And I'm not saying it's easy, right? It is delicate of, all right, what are you informing your work friend versus what are you telling your spouse or your personal friends? And, you know, it's really interesting because we run an assistant business and we try to teach folks how to delegate. But candidly, I'm not always the best at delegating. And so the short answer to even answer your question is, I don't have the secret sauce. I don't, you know. I feel like we do a pretty darn good job, but I would never sit here and say, here's the playbook to hear the if-then scenarios. And all right, if it's this topic, this, there's a certain element of you have to know yourself. You have to know your core values. Every friend relationship is different. So I think really the answer is you have to customize and you have to build a relationship scenario that feels good to you. It feels good to your significant other, your personal life, but also your work life, because what works for us may not work for everyone. And I just want to be really candid and vulnerable about that. You know, this conversation is not a written playbook to what we've built, because what we've done may not work for everybody. And people can, maybe there is a scenario where they're like, yes, your work friend, I'm about to leave in a few weeks. I just want you to know. And maybe there's some validity in the reasons why that's okay. And in your example, it wasn't, right? So I think what's important is that we're all different. We all have different viewpoints and values. But I think the key point is find a relationship and communication method that works for you, works on the other side of the fence, and then continually gather feedback and build upon that. Because there's no one size fits all.
That's very true. I was thinking too of some of my listeners might be stay-at-home parents, and they're like, my work friends are toddlers and they verbally abuse me and I have to wipe their butts. And they're like not in this space, but maybe their partner or spouse is the one who's the breadwinner. They are working out there and they're like, that life's a little bit of a mystery to me. Maybe I don't like the term, do you stay at home or do you work? I like the question of, do you work inside the home or do you work outside the home? Because the work inside the home as a stay-at-home parent is substantial and it's 24/7 and it is way more laboring than the others. But maybe their partner is the one who's out in the workforce. And what do you think are some questions that they could ask their partner about their work friends? You know, like if it does feel like this kind of mysterious world, they kind of want to be invited into it, but they also like don't just want to show up at a party and have no idea what's happening in there. How can this person feel more connected and integrated to their partner's world that's like really outside of them?
Yeah, that's a really, really valid point. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is, first and foremost, the macro on that is just you have to have open communication, right? If something's feeling uncomfortable, I think first you have to express why it's feeling uncomfortable. Like, for example, if you are someone who's working inside the home and you're like, man, I'm not sure who these people are. I know my significant other is always on the phone with someone and they're messaging. I think first opening the communication is really important. And I believe in a really healthy relationship, if you are expressing any discomfort, the other partner should be able to help bridge that gap as best they can, which, you know, I can only directly speak to the way we've operated, which is really it's educating and informing and inviting my wife to know who you are and where you're at in life, and that you're a mother, right? You have kiddos, you're a wife, you live in California. I mean, just some of those baseline facts for her makes it feel a little bit more comfortable. It also adds a little bit more of a human element outside of just a name that you hear, right? So when my wife thinks of Haven, she's not thinking of Haven as just someone she doesn't know about and is just this, you know, mysterious figure. She thinks of you as, oh yeah, that's Kyle's business partner, but she's got a couple kiddos and she's married, and you know, that I think is really important to bridging that gap as best you can. And I'm not saying that you need to ask, hey, I want a full breakdown and profile of everybody you're working with, but I think it's important to ask those questions of, hey, who are you spending your time with at work, and learning as much as you can about them to create some of that comfort. And I think if the situation is right, welcoming, let's have them over for dinner, or let's meet. So like you mentioned, all of a sudden at a holiday party, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the person you've been talking with for the last few years. So I think it's having that open communication. And I think having a work friend does not mean that it has to always and everything be solely about work, right? So like we've spoke about, I don't know the ins and outs of your personal life, right? I don't even know the ins and outs of your extended family and your brothers and sisters.
How many podcasts have you listened to of mine, Kyle? Be honest.
2.
Okay. See, I love that.
2.
I love that, like, there's no
2.
integration outside of work.
Yeah, it's 2. And, you know, 1, it's okay to be truthful about that because, like we mentioned, we're very different.
Yeah.
My podcasts I watch are about sports and the Green Bay Packers. Right? I am not necessarily the target audience.
No.
Learning about Botox and relationships.
I don't use Botox. It was a topic.
It was a headline I saw. Okay, it was a headline I saw. But that's okay,
Yes.
right? Like that is okay, and even us being able to be truthful and laugh about it is really fantastic. So, you know, coming back to your original question, I don't believe there's a playbook. I don't think there's a series of questions. I think it's, if someone feels uncomfortable, I would bridge that conversation and try to bridge that gap by inviting them to learn more about who your work friends are and what that relationship really looks like.
Yeah. And so Aaron and I are both working outside the home. And so I'm not uncomfortable with what he's doing. I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, he uses terms and phrases I don't understand. I try and grasp it from him. And he's also the kind of person, when we're in person together, it's so good. But when he's gone, he's hyper focused down. Like it's not a lot of that. So one time our marriage counselor, I was like, how do I get this like more distilled out of him? How do I learn more about what's happening in his day? And he had the best idea that we'll do pretty much almost anytime Erin is traveling is he's like, okay, Erin, I want you to take a picture of your lunch and send it to her. Because that's context. Where are you eating lunch? What did you choose to eat? Who are you with? What happened before and after? And it sparks this really great dialogue where it's like a really simple, really practical thing that helps me feel more invited into his world and more a part of what's happening when he's gone. But also there was something that Esther Perel was saying is like how this mystery is an amazing in marriages. Like you think sometimes the most intoxicating thing about dating a new person is because you're getting to know them. But then when you're married over time, you know so much. But you going apart and living your separate lives and then having new information to come back for. Sometimes Erin and I, so we have a standing date night every single Friday. Like it's sacred to us. We take it really seriously. Sometimes we will hold on to things from during the week to bring it up on date night because it's like really like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting to tell you. This is what's happened. And then we can actually focus on the back and forth. And that helps too, where it's like a note in your phone or something highlighted or something where it was like, man, this was big and I wanted to play it out before I could tell you so we could do back and forth. So I feel like there's also different ways to invite the other person into your work life if it does feel separated or like isolated in that way. I'd imagine Janelle has insane stories from working at a hospital that are completely different. Like you and I work remote with our brains. She's actually saving lives. Yeah. Like she's actually on her feet all day.
Yeah. You really brought up a really great point is that it goes both ways. You know, we're speaking a lot about our relationship, but I feel the same way. Like you mentioned, my wife works in a hospital. She's interacting with doctors and other nurses. And I also sometimes feel like, who are these people that you're hanging out with? Or I'll hear names. And so, you know, it's important that this is a two-way street. And if you are someone who works inside the home, you also have these relationships, right? Whatever you want to call them. Maybe it's the person you always go to the park with or someone you see at the swimming lesson or whatever it may be. So I think it is, I want to directly acknowledge also, it is a two-way street. You know, it's not just since I'm in a I have a work friend that I need to be constantly bridging this connection with my wife. It goes both ways. I'm also curious about what's going on. And there are times where I'll ask her, I'm like, who is John? All right. Why you talk about John a lot and that you're collaborating with John? Like, who is this John? Right. And, you know, there's some times where she'll pull up maybe on her phone, like, oh, here's a picture of John or, you know, giving me like, oh yeah, John's been there for 20 years, you know, just getting like a little bit of info to add that human element instead of like, John, now I can put a face to a name. And I have now seen these folks at holiday parties and other events. So you brought up a really great point that was really an aha for me as I, you know, have navigated having a work friend, is that whether your significant other or not is in a professional environment or an in-home environment, we have these work type friends in all areas of life. And it's great to bridge those gaps and invite your significant other to be involved in it, even if it's a text of here's, you know, the meal I had, right? It's important.
And you're right, even in the home, it's like the parents at the park that you're meeting up with. Like we all have our different kind of spheres, but it does make me really wish there were other versions or words for friend. Or you know how in Greek with love, it's like filio, brotherly, or agape, or all these different type of words instead of just saying love. Like I love steak in a different way than I love Erin. But I love steak, but maybe it's not the same weight. I feel like friend, it's like, yeah, I have my best friend Candace who knows everything about me. Then I have my work friend Kyle. Like it's different, but we say friend loosely, but it carries different weights in different meetings. You know, I feel like that's also a piece of work friend. They're 40 hours plus a week. Like you and I work really hard. We talk a lot. And it's all in this one specific sphere, too, which is just so different outside of it. I mean, I got reamed online for calling my gym friend when they're more of like an acquaintance. You know, it's different. I would get you a birthday gift, you know?
It goes back to this like whole thing that in life, unfortunately, we always have to feel that everything's very black and white. And there are gray areas, like this term friend. Like people put in their mind, what does that mean? And it must mean that. When you nailed it, like we would consider each other work friends. But like we mentioned, outside of work, we're not buddies, necessarily. And that's not a negative thing. So
Well, you know what it also brings up is like, I don't like when people call companies family, because I was like, I would never fire my brother or sister. But if someone's underperforming and we've given them ample opportunities and a path, eventually that may be the transition that happens. So I think in this work friend, it could blur the lines when you have to have these really tough conversations about the role and what the role requires and what the KPIs, the metrics, the responsibilities, and what they need to do to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And I think that's where we keep coming back to this theme of open communication. And it sounds cliche, right? Everything's solved with open communication, but it's the truth. And I think communicating around what the difference between my best friend in my life versus my work friend versus my wife versus other colleagues, even in our business that we spend lots of time with as well. There's layers of work friends at our company, right? Of work friends, right? Whether we have a relationship, we have managers, we have, account managers, and we all have different relationships with them. So I think it's just really important to have open communication. And I also think it's communication, but also the respect around that. Because you're right. We have lots of various friends, and they all have different definitions and different ways they impact your life. And communicating about that, I think, is really important.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything, parting words, you want to add about the topic?
I think the biggest parting words I have is kind of something that I've already mentioned that's really important. Humans and people are tough, really tough. And I don't believe I believe society and in general, we try to oversimplify humans when we're very complex and very different. And I'm very much different than you. So I think for me, let's stop trying to oversimplify and put in a box labeling and what a work friend versus this means. Let's just acknowledge that humans are tough, humans are complex, and that the way we are viewing a work friend may be very different than someone, and that's okay. That's completely okay, and I think we should welcome that. We should communicate about it, and at the end of the day, you need to find a situation that works for you.
I think I would add, it's the same, but it's almost opposite to what you're saying. Like, I love the compartmentalization of different relationships. Like, I love that for you and I, like, we talk so much about work and we're so passionate about it. But I live in Los Angeles with a podcast and you live in Colorado with a llama farm and you play hockey. Like that, I love that that's different. I love that, with my friends, like it's, I don't care if they suck at work. It doesn't matter to me. Like, what's the difference? We're here to hang out. We're here to get our nails done. We're here to chat. I don't want to employ my friends. I also love my church community. I don't want these to overlap in huge ways that if one goes down, they're all going down. I love this idea that like there can be some separation, and it doesn't mean that you're isolating yourself. And I'm different at work than I am at church, or I'm different with Aaron than I am with a neighbor. Like, I'm the same person. I'm an integrated, holistic person. It's just different parts of me that are coming out in those areas where I think that's fine too. Of different shades are expressed. I'm different on my softball field on Thursday nights. I get a little more aggressive, like it's a different competitive nature part of me that I'm not going to do around my kids. That's not as, beneficial for them. Or with my husband, I will never have signed a prenup. You and I, we just updated our ops agreement. We have things in writing, very clear, everything's sectioned. And so I think it's also just the nuance of these different categories. And it really is, like you said, open communication of the expectations. Like, we were very clear when we went into business. Hey, these are my expectations of what I'm wanting. Are they aligned with what you have? Yeah. You had very clear expectations, and we tried to meet in the middle and say that up front as best we can. Things come up we didn't expect.
course.
It's been a journey.
Of course.
We have a lot of horror stories
To say the least.
or scars, but I'm so proud of that decision.
Yeah.
And I think it's been great, and I'm really proud of how we're handling it. I love how we're growing the team. I think it's interesting you started the business to help people, and that's still our mission. It is absolutely still our mission. We brought in a third-party feedback to not only speak with all of our clients that was outside of us and anonymous, but speak with all of our employees, because there's this view of sometimes at the top it's like an iceberg where leadership only sees so much going down, but people at the lower end of an org chart, accountability chart, they see so many of the issues. And I was like, what are the issues that aren't getting let up to us?
Yeah.
What are the glaring things our employees are seeing and feeling that maybe we haven't addressed or fixed? And I was so proud to read the report and to speak with the interviewer. She goes like, you guys have an amazing culture. She was like, people love to work here. They feel supported. Obviously there's areas we can work on.
Absolutely.
But I was like, these are very fixable areas. These are things that we can adjust and tweak. And so I think that's something too of like, at the end of the day, people need to be extremely selective about who they're not only going into business with, but who their work friends are. They say that you're a sum of the 5 people around you. That includes these work relationships. If you're around someone who's pulling you down, who's not a good person, who is not of character, who is blurring lines, who is, being shady, that does pull you down. Like you want to be around people that pull you up as well. And so just because you're locking arms doesn't mean that you have to be super close. You can get in and get out and get your job done if they're not people that are bringing you up or elevating you.
Yeah, I think, kind of just to conclude also on that, there are folks out there listening like, I have a work friend, but I have to. And I'm like, I have to work with this person every day and I have to collaborate with them. And that's probably more often than not. I want to reflect that. I'm very grateful for our journey and the fact that we did have some decision-making authority about our particular relationship. And more often than not, most people don't get to experience that. You are forced into a situation where sometimes you're working with people you don't enjoy and you have to be work friends with. And you're like, I don't want to be work friends with this person. And so again, having those boundaries, having that mutual respect, and like what you mentioned, you don't have to be locked arms walking into work every day and talking about your families and friends. There is an ability to openly communicate and have boundaries where, hey, we're coming in, we're going to work, we're going to collaborate in a professional setting, and I'm out of here. That's also okay.
It does actually remind me. I remember I worked in a position where I had my own office, but it was around other people. And there was someone who was technically higher than me. She wasn't like my direct manager, but she was a different manager. And she was so negative, like just such a downer. And I remember I literally had to ask my therapist, I was like, how do you get out of these conversations? I was like, because she's coming into my office, but it's my office. Yeah. I don't know how to get her to leave. And he was like, you just have to end on a statement that leaves things uncomfortable in between. He was like, don't open it up. Like with most people, you want this rapport. Sometimes you just end the statement. Yeah. He's like, 2, you can use body language. You stand up and walk to the door. That clues to her, like, it's time for you to leave. Yeah. And so I also think there is this instance of maybe you're with work friends that you don't want to be with. Like, you are going to have to draw some kind of lines because otherwise you're going to get dragged down. That lady would have been in my office gossiping, talking bad about people, and she wasn't getting the hint when I was not going there or when I would say something positive. Like, there is some line. We've had people in our company where I was like, these are not good people for our culture. Like, this is going to be dangerous if we let this keep going. We have to have these hard conversations, and they're painful and they're uncomfortable. But if it's for the greater good, they also kind of have to be had. Maybe your greater good is just your own sanity, your own life, your own decisions. And like, just because you're in arms with work friends and maybe you don't have the power to change things, you actually do. I think to some degree, we all have more power than we realize to stop something from going more negative.
Yeah. And I think inviting, some of your personal relationships into that is okay, right? Mm-hmm. If you are in a tough work friend relationship, I think it can be helpful to invite your significant other to be a part of that discovery process and leveraging them. So, again, I think it goes back to, that open communication, but I think you made a good point. You do have some control. Like you are going to be in situations where you feel locked, where you have to work with someone that you don't want to work with, but you can set boundaries, and it is a short-term discomfort for a long-term gain. And I know we have had that happen numerous times running a business. It is very short, very uncomfortable conversations, but I promise you, you will leave those conversations with a huge weight off your shoulders, and you will feel a lot better in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kyle, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to start listening to some more episodes.
I was like, is this your number 3?
This will be number 3.
Perfect. That's all I asked for.
I love it. Thanks, Haven.
I'll just see you on Zoom.
Yes, I'll see you in our next same page meeting.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening. I've wanted to have Kyle on for a while. We've been in business for years now. But again, he lives in Colorado. I only film these like once every 6 weeks. I stack them back to back. But he was coming in town for a strategic planning. I was like, let's do an episode together. Let's talk about this unique dynamic of work friends and how it's really unlike other type of friends. So I'm glad he was game to do it. I'm glad this is the 3rd episode he's going to listen to. My goal is to get 4 by the next year. Maybe I'll do a different topic he's more interested in that's not Botox and whether we're getting it or not. But thank you for listening. You can follow, subscribe on socials at Haven the Podcast. That's Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube for long form. It's the same title, same with Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you're already listening to this, you already found it one way. So I feel kind of silly always giving these tags, but I know I'm supposed to do it. So you can go and hit subscribe, be notified when new podcast episodes come, or you can go to havenpod.com, sign up for my monthly newsletter, which is just some extra content. But until next time, thanks for listening.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Kay Jewelers' early Black Friday sale is happening now. Get up to 50% off Black Friday deals and up to 40% off everything else. Don't miss this sale. Start your season with savings, only at Kay. Exclusions apply. See Kay.com/exclusions for details.